So this is kind of the money shot. Here we have a 1 foot inundation, and this is a close-up, so this is Lower Manhattan, 2 feet, 4 feet, the 100-year floodplain. We go to a Category 2 hurricane, and then a Category 4 hurricane. And you can see how much of Lower Manhattan and New Jersey are inundated with a Category 4 hurricane. And as you know, there are many arguments made that the hurricanes, as other kinds of storms, will become more intense with climate change. What this does, I think, is more powerful than lots and lots of verbal testimony to Congress. It helps you understand things like, even with a Cat 2 hurricane, which is no big deal at all, that's, you can look at the real estate value of that. That's all, those are ports, so the lost income and revenues and things like that, not to mention real estate problems in this part of Manhattan. So very simply, and with the tools you have, you could also make them go live and probably drag a mouse over something and figure out if this is out of service for 4 days, how much revenue is lost while the water's draining out, or over 2 months while you're fixing things after a storm. So that's sort of the analysis phase, and they went through a very thorough design process themselves. And this is just one snap where they look at reutilizing the bay for local ferries to a greater degree and local transportation to a greater degree, and incorporating these things that I think are intended to kind of kill the tidal surges, kind of artificial reefs. And then they looked at ecosystems, habitats, and the creation of elements in the bay. And of course, you can, with Photoshop and things like that, you can very easily present to members of Congress or others an important proposal that may not be so easily visualizable otherwise. And Guy, I believe, is a structural engineer. Catherine is a landscape architect and architect by training, and Adam is an architect by training. So those are just some examples of the important work that we need to be doing that incorporates GIS as a foundation and the work of very good, committed designers to improving the physical world and the way human beings inhabit it. I'm going to now switch gears and talk about the role of the National Academy of Environmental Design in advancing evidence-based design research. First of all, I'll briefly mention 4 things: who we are, what our mission and purpose is, our governance structure, and our research. I want to begin by, and I'm happy to talk about this in more detail over lunch or whatever, but many of us began the development of a National Academy of Environmental Design several years ago as a companion to the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and the Institute of Medicine, which are the key scientific academies that provide much of the scientific policy advice that governs the Congress of our country. When I began looking at these things, as many of you have, you recognize that none of the disciplines that we're in are very well represented in these disciplines. In fact, when we met with the president of the National Academy of Engineering, we had a bit the same reaction as the NSF proposal, which is, what are you kidding? What do you all have to contribute here? And yet, as we all know, in between pure research and human behavior is our disciplines. And so it's very important that if we can't be involved through these disciplines, we have a way with enough impact to make our case heard as well. And that's why we've created the National Academy of Environmental Design. We started with the disciplines listed on the right, which are including interdisciplinary groups, and we reached out to them, created a steering committee, so that rather than all of us individually going to Congress, which of course we can still do, or going to the NSF, or going to our provosts or things like that, we can work together because we believe that we can be more effective, and we need each other, as we can see in these kind of interdisciplinary groups. We need the expertise that comes from the various people in this room. So we have now collected the major architectural organizations: construction, communications design, interior design, landscape architecture, planning, and related disciplines, and formed a steering committee which has now led to an organization that's a not-for-profit in Washington, D.C. We have leadership from each of the disciplines on an executive council that includes Tom Fisher, who spoke this morning, and Fritz Steiner, who will be speaking later today, and the support of others of you in the room who I won't embarrass at this moment. Our mission is to serve the public by promoting the flourishing of individuals, communities, and the natural world through the sustainable design and stewardship of human and natural environments. And we have looked at 4 goals, 2 of which I identified earlier: to facilitate research in cooperation with government agencies, foundations, and other institutions and organizations, to communicate the results of ongoing research to the public and other stakeholders. If we're just keeping it to ourselves or going to our professional associations, we're not making an impact in the larger world, at least not very quickly. And then also, and this is very important and what many of you were talking about this morning already, to develop and maintain a multidisciplinary knowledge base on the complex interrelationship of individuals, communities, and the planet. GIS certainly isn't the only tool that will do that, but it's a very important and very powerful tool. And then to foster scholarly cooperation and exchange, which is why I'm so pleased to have been invited today, because certainly for me as an audience member, I'll be learning a lot from all of you. As I mentioned, we have a council which has representatives at this point from all of the major environmental design disciplines, officers, and that includes, as I mentioned, I serve as the president, Tom Fisher. I hope some of these other names are representative as well. And a research committee which has been is just being formed. Jim Westcott of MIT is the chair of the committee, and he is beginning to put together an agenda. He is also a member of the National Research Council, which is the research arm of the National Academies. So we see him also as one of our sort of people in the room to remind folks in the academies that what we're doing is important to what they're doing. And we have begun to create a research map. We've identified, mostly based on websites which are notoriously inaccurate and out of date, but based on some of the organizations that are involved, various categories of work that we do in communities, human factors, pedagogy, preservation, materials, performance, construction, innovation, visualization, which, as I say, goes back to Leonardo, the economy, and the practice. And you can see that, although these may be incomplete, for instance, this is the organization that I used to be president of and that Tom Fisher is now president of, that the ACSA, Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture, focuses in some of these areas, but less in others. And then just sort of pulling apart, taking the organizations out, I just would like to end with this slide to suggest that GIS, the tool that you all work with so well and have such important ambitions for in the future, deals certainly with communities, with human factors, with the built environment, including preservation and conservation, perhaps with material science applications in certain ways, easily with risk and resilience, certainly with construction. It is about visualization and communication and in the most fundamental way. Design economy, of course, is what it's often been used for in planning and real estate decision making, and it is transforming the profession through its very presence here with us. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you for your time.